Okay, in this video we're going to quickly look at the operations of multiplication and division with positive and negative numbers. And again, this includes all real numbers. This could be fractions, decimals, or percents. I'm just going to stick with whole numbers just to kind of keep it simple here to start with. Again, the mathy rules get kind of complicated because you're looking at absolute values and talking about very technical terms. I just kind of boil it down and make it very, very easy. That when you are multiplying or dividing, just remember that negatives come in pairs. Short, sweet, and applies to everything. Okay, I'm going to do a couple examples here. We all know that 2 times 3, the product of that is going to be 6. So in each of these cases, our outcome is going to be some version of 6. So we need to think about our rules with our positive and negative signs. The only rule that you need to be aware of here is negatives come in pairs. So I have a pair of negatives here. There's my pair. My answer has to be positive. Okay, over here I have 2 times a negative 3. I've got a negative there. Therefore, my answer has to be negative to create that pair. Here I've got negative 2 times 3. That's a negative. My answer is going to have to be negative in order to have a partner there. And here there's no negatives, so I can't have a negative in my answer. So you're kind of looking at every multiplication and division statement has 3 components. The 2 parts to your problem, 2 components to your problem, and then your outcome. And so you just kind of keep it in mind that negatives come in pairs, and if you've got a negative, it better have a partner to make it a true statement. So that makes it really short and sweet and easy. Same thing here with our 8 divided by 2. In each of these cases, we know it's going to be some version of 4. We've got to use our rules with the negatives come in pairs. Here I've got a pair of negatives there, so my answer must be a positive 4. Here I have a negative here, so my answer must be negative to create that partner, that pairing. Here I have a negative, so my answer is going to have to be negative. And here there's no negative, so my answer is going to have to be positive. So just keep that in mind. Negatives come in pairs. If you see a negative in part of your answer, in part of your problem, your outcome's going to have to be negative. Those negatives don't want to be lonely. They've got to be in partners. So moving forward, just practicing a couple of these. We've got negative times positive is going to be a negative 15. Negative times a negative is going to be positive 15. Positive times a negative, got to have a partner. It's going to be negative 42. Same thing here. We've got a negative here, going to have a partner. Negative 42. Here our negatives already have a partner, so our outcome's going to be positive. Here, our outcome, that negative needs a partner, so we're going to have negative 32 to create that partnership. This is going to be positive. We need to have a negative, so that'd be negative 80. Down here, it's really helpful when you start doing strings of numbers like this. You see that you've got a pair of negatives in there, you know right out of the gate your answer is going to be positive. So this would end up being, I believe, a positive 72. And this is going to be, we've got one negative here, so our answer is going to have to be negative, and that's going to come out to be a negative 40. Okay, as I said before, this applies to fractions as well. So you can use your fraction skills. 2 goes into the 6 3 times. Other than that, I know my answer is going to have to be negative because I have a negative here. Multiplying straight across, we're going to end up with 5/9. Here, that's another division problem, basically. But 9 goes into 36 4 times. Because I've got the pair of negatives, my answer is going to have to be positive. Here, my outcome is going to have to be negative because this guy needs a partner. 7 goes into 28 4 times. Here, I've got my 2 negatives, so I know my answer is going to have to be positive. Then I can apply my fraction skills. 4 goes into 12 3 times, so this is going to come out to be a positive 1 over 21. Or, I'm sorry, 5 over 21. Sorry about that. Okay, I'm trying to think what else I wanted to remind you of this. On each of these cases, I just want you to remember you've got 2 components. You've got to figure out the sign, and then you've got to do the calculation piece. Another reason why I like this, the whole idea of negatives come in pairs, is that comes in play when you start dealing with exponents. If I had something like 2 to the, squared, and let's make that to the 4th power so that we're not confusing which part I'm talking. Word, I can't write today, sorry. Okay, so 2 to the 4th power, that's a positive even number of times. That's going to give us 16. But if I had negative 2 to the 4th power, Well, if you think about it, that's going to be negative times a negative times a negative times a negative. Here's a pair of negatives, here's a pair of negatives. That's also going to come out to be a positive 16. So when your base is negative raised to an even power, no sweat. It all comes out to be positive outcome because you're going to have pairs of negatives. But I want you to think about something like, what if I had a negative 3 raised to, we'll go with the 4th power again. We're going to have a negative times a negative. I'm sorry, I want to make that to an odd power. So we're going to have a negative times a negative times a negative. Well, there's a pair of negatives. This third negative, 3, in each of these cases, I don't know if you're following what I'm getting at here. So this negative 3 still needs a partner. But 3 times 3 times 3 is going to give us 27. So that'd be a negative 27. Whereas when I have positive, you're going to have positive outcomes. So we're going to get more practice dealing with exponents, but you're going to really quickly recognize that when you have a negative base to an even power, it automatically has an even number of negatives. Your outcome's going to be positive. But a negative base to an odd power, that one of those negatives is not going to have a partner. So you're going to have a negative outcome. And so it's very easy to see that when you're thinking about negatives coming in pairs when you start to deal with exponents and you have bases that are negative bases. Okay, so that's one thing that evolves as you move forward. Another thing is this scenario down here. Very often you have, this 0 gets in the picture here. So we have 0 divided by 5, and I'll say, well, students, what does that equal to? Students say, well, yeah, that's 0. You can always double check it. Every division statement can be rewritten as a multiplication statement. So check it going backwards. Is 0 times 5 equal to 0? It's like, yep, that works. It is equal to 0. Well, then what is 5 divided by 0? And students will say, well, that's 5. And then they'll say, well, let's double check it. Is 5 times 0 equal to 5? And they're like, oh, no. I meant that's equal to 0 too. So then we'll say, well, let's double check that. Is 0 times 0 equal to 5? And we're like, no, that doesn't work. And we're like, well, what the heck is it equal to? It's actually undefined. And I'm going to abbreviate undefined with the word here, or the abbreviation UND. But I do want to show you what your calculator will show you. I'm hoping you can see that screen okay. Not too much glare there. I'm going to look at this and say 5 divided by 0. And see what my calculator says. And it says divide by 0 error. Basically, you can't divide anything by 0, and that's what the calculator's telling you. So it's not possible to divide any number by 0. So this is your general rule. 0 divided by some number is equal to 0. Some number divided by 0 is undefined. Okay, that's the rule there. You can kind of easily remember that, is that you can balance, you can't balance anything on a ball. That would be the easiest way to remember that. You can't balance anything on the ball, so that's when it's undefined.